Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Sarah Edens, a finance coach, author, and wealth mindset researcher, and I'm so glad you've chosen to join me today to learn how to unlock your inner millionaire by developing a wealth mindset and finance skills. Today we're talking about something really important. So we talk a lot about wealth mindset, which is also called abundance mindset on this channel, but it's really important to know what the flip side of that is. It's called lack mindset. And lack mindset is something that can really keep you stuck in a place where you're not experiencing financial abundance. And you might not be experiencing abundance in other areas of your life as well because of this lack mindset. It doesn't just apply to money. So, lack mindset is something that basically is a belief that there's not enough to go around. At the end of the day, that there's not enough for everyone, that there's limited resources, and that particularly if you're struggling with a lack mindset, that there's not enough for you, and that you aren't going to be able to get your needs met. And when you look at people with lack mindset, very often you'll find that either they came from a traumatic childhood experience of poverty or food insecurity or not having enough money or not having housing security, because a lot of times these are really rooted in very real, very traumatic places. So I don't want to underestimate the importance of this. It can be rooted in something real and in a real fact, a real situation that might have happened in your life, or it could have been something that's even generational. Lack mindset can be generational. Maybe your grandparents grew up during the Depression when everyone, well, many people lost everything they had. Or maybe they grew up during a wartime when there was actual, food scarcity and a lot of poverty and deprivation as well. So sometimes that kind of mindset around lack, around money, can be passed on from generation to generation. So it might be something that you had plenty of food and housing security growing up and didn't have to worry about money, but maybe your parents grew up poor or their parents grew up during a time of financial hardship. And so it's very interesting how these different attitudes can very often be multi-generational. So it's important to remember, and this might be a fun exercise for you to do at some point, is really stop and say, if I'm struggling from lack mindset, if I can identify with some of these points in this video, where did this come from? Was this something that I've got in my money narrative because of a difficult situation that I went through as a child? Did I inherit this in a way from my parents or my grandparents and the way that they talked about money and resources because of something they went through in their life that was very difficult? So really fascinating thing to really kind of pause and think about, because it doesn't come from nowhere, and it's not wrong to have a lack mindset if you're suffering from that and it's holding you back from living your best life. It's not wrong or bad, so don't judge yourself or feel bad about it, but it's just something to be aware of and see if you recognize yourself in any of these five kind of issues that people can have that might point to that you're struggling with a lack mindset. So number one is living in constant fear of running out. And this isn't applied to the scenario where you actually are in danger of running out of things. Maybe you're really struggling to make ends meet. You're having a lot of trouble with getting enough food to feed your family. You're having a lot of trouble with housing security. That doesn't apply to this situation. What I'm talking about here is even if you have plenty of money, and even if you have a roof over your head that you don't have to worry about it going anywhere anytime soon, and even if you have a great job and your spouse has a great job or your partner has a great job, but you're still obsessed with fear that you're not going to have enough money, or maybe that you won't have enough money in the future, like say for retirement, which is a good thing to think about, and planning ahead for retirement is really important. But maybe you're just like really obsessed with worry and letting that consume you with worry that you're not going to have enough resources to meet your needs or your family's needs, despite all the evidence in your life pointing the other direction, that everything's okay, that you have, what you need and everything's all right, but you just kind of can't shake that nagging worry. That could be a sign that you're suffering from a lack mindset. Number two is hoarding. Hoarding is a really interesting behavior that is really rooted in psychology. And so hoarding is basically keeping too many things around in your life that you don't need. They're not serving you, but you just keep them around because, maybe you have this sense that like a really deep emotional distress when you think about getting rid of things because you're like, oh my goodness, but I might need that. So you're afraid to get rid of anything or donate anything or, clear out your space and so you might end up living with a lot of clutter in your life or have closets that are stuffed full of things or a garage that's so full you can't get your cars in or a basement that's full of clutter that causes its own level of emotional stress, right? Having a lot of clutter in our lives isn't good for us, physical clutter. But you can't bear to think of getting rid of any of it or going through any of it or even maybe hiring a company to come in and sort it for you and declutter because you are just so worried that you might need it someday that you can't let it go. And that is a very common thing that can also happen if you did have a traumatic experience at some point in your life of financial hardship, food insecurity, things like that. It can be kind of a triggered thing that you end up holding on to throughout your adult life, no matter how well you're doing financially, that you might end up still struggling with hoarding. Maybe you buy too much food at the grocery store just because you're worried about running out of food and then your family can't get through it all fast enough. Whatever the case may be, it's a very important thing to think through because hoarding can even almost create, a danger, a physical danger for your home. If you're hoarding things and it's creating a fire hazard, for example, or, you've got such a cluttered house that you couldn't get to the windows in your home to escape from a fire, or, your doorways are blocked, or there's just, things are a trip hazard maybe for you of falling over stuff. So really good to just have a think about, do you see these kind of signs that you're unconsciously hoarding things because you're worried about running out? That could mean you're struggling with a lack mindset, which is holding you back in other areas as well. Number 3 is thinking of life as a zero-sum game. I feel like we're often pitched this from advertising, from the media. You see this in, popular entertainment and TV and things like that, where it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world and everybody's, you just got to get in there and get everything you can while it's there because there's not enough for everyone. So if you have that kind of zero-sum thinking, then life's going to be very unpleasant for you. And it could really indicate that you're struggling with a lack mindset of really thinking about, not being happy for someone else when something good happens to them, that you find yourself, rather than being happy for a friend or a colleague if they get a promotion at work, you're just jealous of them and almost, angry at them for doing better because you feel like, oh my goodness, now I'm going to be doing worse. There's less for me because they're getting ahead or I feel left behind. So that type of thing can really become an all-consuming thing, especially with social media, where a lot of times people are displaying their wealth or their status symbols, or they're talking about, highlights of their life, like a new relationship, an engagement, a wedding, growing their family, a new home, a beautiful vacation, all of these things. And unfortunately, if you suffer from lack mindset, you will probably be consumed with envy and jealousy if you're on social media at all, because rather than feeling inspired by those people to take action in your own life, if you want some of those things too, you'll just feel jealous and angry and consumed with this kind of resentment towards people who are more successful than you. So if you find yourself thinking about life as a zero-sum game where, there's just not enough for everyone and, if somebody wins, it means someone else is losing, then really have a think about that if that's something where you're recognizing yourself. Number 4 is being a miser. So the most famous example of this is probably Charles Dickens' Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. And he even figured this out in the end, thanks to the Ghosts of Christmas Past. But it's really important to think about this, okay? Do you own your money? Or does your money own you? Because for misers, they are afraid to spend any money on anything. You picture that opening scene in The Christmas Carol where Charles Dickens is coming back to his drafty, cold, unheated, unlit house, and he's eating his tiny little bowl of cold gruel on Christmas Eve before he goes and crawls into his cold bed. And it's just a perfect case in point of how misers are so afraid to spend any of their money that they'll build up enormous bank accounts or enormous investment portfolios, or they'll have a lot of real estate investment or investment in other things, and that makes them very happy to have those, bank balances and so forth. But then they're not able to spend on any of their own needs, and they're not able to be generous with others or be philanthropic. And so misers really suffer in the sense that they have that lack mindset of feeling like they can't spend any of their money because what if they need it later? Kind of like hoarders who are like, well, I can't get rid of that. What if I need it later? Misers are like, well, I can't spend that because what if I need it later for something else? So make sure that you own your money. Don't let your money own you. And fifth and final one here is resisting making wise investments. So you might be struggling with a lack mindset if you can't bring yourself to invest even in very safe, very conservative investment vehicles. And I don't advise about investing on my channel here, but there's lots of other YouTube channels that are specifically dedicated to teaching you how to invest, whether that's in the stock market, real estate. I mean, there's so many different things you can invest in out there. But for many people, they are so afraid of losing money with their investing that they just don't invest, and then they lose out on all the benefits of compound interest, appreciation, say with your real estate purchases, things like that. And so they often hold themselves back from experiencing the wealth that they might have had if they'd, perhaps hired an investment advisor and really learned how to kind of navigate that risk that comes with investing, because if you invest, you can lose money just as easily as you can make it if you don't know what you're doing. But just having such a risk aversion because they don't want to lose their money, that the only thing they'll put it into is, basically their savings account or under their mattress or in something like that, where they feel like, okay, my money's safe. I don't have to worry about it. So it's just, investing is not for everyone. So it's not to say that if you're not an investor, you struggle with lack mindset, not at all. But if you find that the reason you're not in investments is because you're so afraid of losing money, then it might be something to think through and, just start educating yourself about investing and look and see how that might play into your wealth building strategy going forward if this resonates with you. So that's the 5 ways to really identify kind of how lack mindset can manifest in your life. And if you are seeing any of those things going on, that's just some things to think through. I'll have a part 2 of this video that I'll link to in the description once it's out, with 5 more ways to see if you've got a lack mindset and if that's holding you back from leveling up your finances. And thank you again for joining me here and for liking and subscribing. I am always so happy and grateful that you are here in our community that we're building of people who are working towards unlocking their inner millionaires by developing a wealth mindset and finance skills. And I will see you again soon in my next video.